Good morning, everybody. This is Nita Patel with IEEE Women in Engineering. I'm glad that you are joining us today. Let me give you a little bit about my background and what I do for work, what I do for IEEE, and then we can take some questions from the group. As I mentioned, I'm Nita Patel. I am a systems and software engineering manager for L3 Communications. The primary work we do is long wave infrared detection, which is just a fancy way to say night vision type systems where you can see in the dark with thermal imagery. And we build a lot of systems for soldiers, whether it's helmet mounted, weapon mounted, handheld type systems. My focus is more of the systems design, from the electronics, the software, the mechanics, the optics, and how it all comes together. And as I said, I'm a functional manager, so I get to work with a lot of great individuals who help build our products, design them, and put them together to help our warfighters. That's what I do for work. And in my part-time passions, I suppose, I'm a active volunteer for IEEE Women in Engineering. This year I've been honored to be the chair for the organization for Women in Engineering. And in the past, I've served in many different roles. I've been IEEE USA Vice President for Communications and Public Awareness. And this year I'm also the Computer Society Board of Governors member. Besides IEEE, I have a very full life. My husband and I are very active in chess. My husband more so than I, probably. He's also better than I am at playing the game. He directs a bunch of tournaments around New England, and I help him out as a tournament director, and sometimes I play in his tournaments. It just depends on what I'm feeling like doing that weekend. And I'm also very active in Toastmasters International. I've been a member of the clubs in this area, as well as served in all the officer roles and served as district officer as well as division governor. So it keeps me busy and keeps me engaged and fun, and I think it's a lot of fun actually to work and then also volunteer because you get a very nice blend and different perspective. In my role as IEEE Women in Engineering, let me share with you a couple of the goals that we've had as Women in Engineering program. One of our main initiatives, as you know, is to help retain, recruit, and recognize women in the fields of technology, especially in the fields of interest to IEEE, which includes a huge array of fields actually. It includes everything from electrical engineering to biomedical engineering to systems design to antennas and propagation, power engineering, controls, software, computer science, IT, uh, chemical engineering, physics. If you can imagine that it's a technology discipline, IEEE probably has a technical society connected with that discipline, and certainly membership connected with that discipline. Within Women in Engineering, our focus is more on recruiting and retaining women within these technical fields, and that's a challenge, as many of you probably know. The statistics seem to have sort of tapered out. I think there was a growth period, maybe about 5 or 7 years ago, where there were more women going into technical disciplines, but lately it seems to be relatively flat. And nobody really knows why. One of our goals is to help figure out or reverse that trend, and we're trying to do that through a lot of different engagement opportunities and engagement programs. Our local affinity groups, which number over 435 now all around the world, do a lot of great engagement and outreach community activities. Lots of programs in what we call the STAR program, which is a mentorship program. Many affinity groups have events where they reach out to local communities, local schools, either K through 12 or university, and help connect with women in these fields or young girls in these fields and make sure that they're hearing the broader perspective, not that it's hard and you have to take a lot of math and it's physics. That's not going to attract a lot of people, but more that it's very creative, it's problem solving, it's focusing on changing humanity for the better by coming up with new ideas and new innovations and engaging not just on the technology side but with people. And I think that sometimes is important to girls, maybe more so than boys. And so it's important to get that message out. So the local affinity groups do these type of outreach activities, but they also do all sorts of other technical and professional development activities. Technical in the sense of providing speakers for technologies relevant to that local community and important to the members of that community, or professional development such as communication, how to write better, how to network, what does it mean to have a mentor or a sponsor, how do you move forward in your career path. All of these are different professional topics that are held from our local affinity groups around the world. At a national and international level, Women in Engineering this year has focused on two really core initiatives, I would say. One of them is this chat series, having this opportunity to connect with women from all across the span of the globe, as well as all across the span of technology and the span of where they are in their careers. We've had student members who are doing a couple of chats all the way to really professional seasoned members who have been in the professional workforce for a long time doing these chats. So you're getting a wide spectrum of individuals that you can talk with in a sort of casual conversation. It's more just to engage with different people around the world. And the second key initiative is trying to launch an International Women in Engineering Conference. We are planning the first conference for May 2nd through 3rd, 2014 in San Francisco, California. The focus and vision of the conference is professional skills development for career women, whether your career is in government or academia or industry. You have certain skills that are needed beyond just the technology skills to help you advance and navigate your career path. And that's going to be the focus of this particular conference, which hopefully will become a recurring event for women in engineering. So those are our two main initiatives. And in addition to those initiatives, we have several activities. We have an ebook series that you can get access through our webpage. We have posters that you can download and display to help provide role models and inspiration for others that might be interested or engaged in engineering technology disciplines. And we have some videos on IEEE TV under the IEEE Women in Engineering video channel, TV channel. And this videos, if you haven't seen them, I really encourage you to take a look at the videos. They're very cool. They're pretty inspiring. We have great women that are profiled, that are part of our committee and part of our community in those videos, and they're really talking about why it's important for them or what they've gotten out of being a woman in technology, and they're very nice. In addition to those inspiring videos, there's some very practical and technical presentations by different members of our community out there on the TV channel. So I encourage you to go out there and take a look at some of this information that's available. So that's a little bit about me, a lot more about women in engineering. I think we have a very vibrant group. And at this point, I'll sort of open it up to questions that people might have, and we'll start our chat and conversation. I know this is coming up on a long weekend, so I'm not quite sure how many of you are out there or preparing for your weekends. Here, where I live in Bedford, New Hampshire, it's been cloudy and rainy all week, and the weekend's not supposed to be much better except for Monday. So hopefully we'll get some nice sun, which is typical of this time of year for us. It's unusual to have so much rain, but I guess that's the way life goes. So I don't see any questions yet. So let me just keep talking. Oh, here we go. What is your favorite project that you have worked on as an engineer? Well, that's a good question. I've been privileged to work on some very interesting projects in my career. I've primarily worked in the defense industry, primarily worked in systems related to night vision technology and night thermal imaging, that kind of thing, signal processing, video processing, those kind of applications, and very close to software embedded. And that's what I did when I first started working at TI. I worked on a system for a tank that was a thermal imager system. And I work today on soldier systems. But in between those couple of jobs, the beginning and today, I worked in Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma, actually, we're the home of University of Oklahoma. And I worked there for the National Weather Service. Actually, I worked for a private company that contracted to the National Weather Service. And I hadn't done any radar work up until that point, but it was a very interesting project. And I think it was interesting because it was truly a system. You have a transmitter, receiver, you have a lot of signal processing, and they're big. Most of what I had worked on before were these small handheld type systems that people can touch and feel, and you run off a battery or something like that. But this system was huge. You have these radomes and towers all across the country, and we have 175 radars in the National Weather Service network. It's called the NextRad system. And I think it was very fascinating because it wasn't just the technology that was fascinating and new for me in terms of applying my background and skills and signal processing in a very different way, but also because you had to deal and interact with 175 different localities, communities that viewed the radar in different ways, what its purpose was, individuals that maintained it, and they all had common objectives, but they all treated it differently. So I thought that was extremely fascinating. And I particularly liked it because I did get to go on a couple of installations. Our job was a 5-year project. I managed as a deputy program manager and chief engineer this $36 million 5-year upgrade project. And it wasn't just about getting the technology right, it was about communicating what the technology did, making sure people understood what the advantage of the new upgrades were going to be, how it was going to affect them, what they should view. And I interacted with technicians and engineers and meteorologists all across the country on this radar network, and it was quite fascinating to hear the different perspectives. So even though you may be in a particular job and you may have done similar type of work, yeah, I'm sure you're going to encounter something similar to I did. I didn't have, I guess, not great expectations about what this job was going to entail, but it ended up being one of my favorite projects just because of the vastness of the interactions and how different everything seemed to be. What are a few of your motivators and what makes you excited about doing what you do? What really makes me excited about doing what I do is that it affects people. I think it's so fascinating that what I do is actually used, actually connected to somebody, and it makes a difference. As I said, I work in the defense industry, so it's even more critical. What I usually build are systems that help our soldiers understand and view the landscape, do reconnaissance to help see what's out there in the nighttime. And that is really exciting. And the second big motivator for me is that it's very creative. I I'm I'm sure I'm dating myself, and you'll figure out quickly as I say I was a huge fan of MacGyver when I was growing up. But growing up and watching him take these really complex situations that he got himself into and then figure out with some very limited set of tools or capabilities or gum or whatever he had on hand how to get himself out of this bind and come up with a creative solution. And that's the really big second motivator for me, is that as an engineer and as a manager and as a person working in a professional environment, I'm constantly asked to come up with creative solutions. And I think that's the most fascinating part about engineering, is that there are so many different ways you can tackle a problem. Even last night, it was funny. I was at a Toastmasters meeting and we needed to figure out how to get two projection systems up. But we didn't have two projectors and we had very limited resources about. So you had to come up with a creative solution for how you're going to solve this problem with only a set of limited resources. And if you think that that was an unusual situation, or MacGyver was very unusual, well, he may have been extreme, but it's not unusual to have limited resources, whether your limited resource is time or equipment or people or whatever it may be, you're going to have limited resources. And what I found is that it's so thrilling. It's so motivating to say, okay, I have this set of criteria and this function that I need to execute. How am I going to do it? And being able to come up with some solution. It may not be the ideal solution. I'm not sure if there is such a thing. It may not be the most creative solution, but it is a solution. And as an engineer, I get to do that on a daily basis to take some set of limited resources, some set of capability, and figure out how I'm going to solve a problem. And I think that's fabulously motivating. So creativity and just being able to engage with people. What words of advice do you have for young female engineers? I'm not sure that I have anything that you probably haven't heard before. One of them is find what it is that you like to do. And you may not even know that yourself. I think it's okay to experiment. And it's okay to just take a job that you think might be interesting to you or to pursue a path that you think might be interesting to you. And just try it. There is nothing that says that what you do today is exactly what you're going to do 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. There are many opportunities for you to adjust your time frame, adjust your path, change where you're going along the way. And I think so you should just find what it is that you like to do and go do it. If you can do that, I think you'll be successful. As a young female engineer, I guess the other advice I wish I had received is don't be afraid of failure. I know a lot of people think that they shouldn't try something or take risk or want to be very conservative and I understand because I've been that way in my life as well. But in the last few years, I've learned that, there really isn't such a thing as real failure. Basically, you're going to go try something. And a lot of people think it's success or failure, but it's really not. It's success and failure. Without some failure, you're not ever going to have success. And maybe you can even argue that you're not going to appreciate your success. But I think to help move forward, you have to not be afraid of failure and take those risks. I mean, don't obviously do silly stuff that you know is absolutely way out there, but take calculated risk and try things. Try whatever interests you and how you want to move forward with it. And if you do that, you're going to find that success and failure kind of go together, and they're not one is good and one is bad. They're just part of advancement. They're part of how you move forward, and it's not that you're going to go down the path on the right or the path on the left, and only one of them is going to get you to nirvana at the end. It's that they're just a path, it's just a journey. And if you make a wrong turn, it doesn't matter. It's not the end of the road. You'll just continue on a different path, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way. So don't be afraid of failure either as a young engineer. So we have one other question. What kind of activities can be conducted under Women in Engineering? Many kinds of activities. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of our local affinity groups have all sorts of activities that they do with outreach. As a Women in Engineering affinity group, I encourage you to reach out to your schools and your community. Set up a Learn about engineering day or go talk to classrooms and girls in the classrooms. What I've learned as I've gone to speak at schools is that usually a lot of men go to speak at schools and talk about engineering, and very few women go to schools and talk about engineering. And that may be because there are not as many women in the workforce, but it makes a huge difference. I've had so many teachers write me after the fact and say, wow, just your coming opened up a whole new world that women can be engineers for some of the students in my classroom. So go out and talk to the communities, talk to the schools, talk to girls that are interested. Set up talks, as I mentioned. You can set up technical talks, you can set up professional development talks. You can just have a conversation. You can have a networking event, have a interview skills development workshop, have a resume review workshop, have a just career conversation workshop, provide some career coaches. One of our groups here had just a fun session where we all went indoor skydiving, and it was great fun. It was a great way to network and communicate and interact. We've also had sessions where we've had afternoon tea and we've had one person present on their career journey. And over tea, we talked about the journey and what some of the good choices were, bad choices, and just had a conversation and a discussion. We've had technical presentations. We've had presentations engaging and connecting. You can also have women in engineering activities at different conferences. So there's all sorts of activities that can be conducted under women in engineering. And of course, it's not exclusive to women and engineers. Certainly, our focus is to engage women in the engineering community and technology communities. But we have a lot of men that want to do that too. The men that are finding that it's important to help advocate for women in engineering or to provide their expertise or to learn from us. I mean, it's not just an exclusive club here. It's more of a community engaging towards advancing a cause, and our cause happens to be the recruitment, retention, and recognition of women in engineering. So the question right after it, I guess, that's leading up to it is how can male engineers get involved? Certainly, male engineers can be members of women in engineering, just as women engineers can be members. It's an open community, as I mentioned. We actually have probably a third of our membership are men, people that find that we provide good services either through our TV channel or videos or our local affinity group activities, or they simply want to be a part of recognizing the importance of women in technology fields and they want to help advocate for that. So men can get involved by becoming a member. They can get involved by setting up these events. It's not that the events need to all be set up just by a woman in the community. Men can help. Men can be presenters at the Women in Engineering events. Men can help coordinate or find venues to set up the events. So there's all sorts of things, and it's not exclusive to any one activity. There's lots of different avenues for how to get engaged. And how can they help promote women in STEM professions? As I said, talk about the fact that there are women in STEM. One of the biggest roadblocks in my view, and I don't necessarily have any solid statistical data, but through various readings and information I've gleaned over the years, I do believe and agree with some of what I've read in that girls simply don't have as many role models. And I think for women and men to get engaged is to help with those role models. And men can also help by being advocates for women within their organizations and making sure that they're checking their biases at the door. A lot of times, you're not even aware of some of the biases you have. And not to say that men only have biases, of course I have biases and women have biases, but I think for men, maybe being aware and checking them a little more often might help to encourage and engage more women within the profession. So how did I get involved with IEEE and why did I get involved with IEEE? I've been involved with IEEE as a student member. I went to Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and there we had a great student branch. I got involved, I believe, my sophomore year, just as a member, attending events, being participant, and then taking on a little bit bigger and bigger role, helping to set up one or two of the meetings, and then in my junior year, we decided as an organization, as a student branch, that we were going to have a SPAC, which is a Student Professional Activities Conference, and I was appointed the chair. Ah, okay, so I'm the chair of this SPAC. At the time, Lee Earl Bryant had just been IEEE president for a few years before, and she lived in the state of Texas, and I thought, okay, she's also had been running for the governor of the state of Texas. And I thought, well, that would be really cool to invite an engineer who is part of the political scene in Texas. And so I searched around, found her information, contacted her, and she said, absolutely. And she helped me identify some other speakers, and people in the community helped me identify some speakers, and we held a SPAC on campus. Well, I was so stoked. We had all these great speakers. We had all this great setup and food, and the university had supported it. And then we ended up having like 30 people show up. And I thought, what? All of this wasted effort, but it wasn't really because the 30 people that showed up, and I even remember after the fact that many people, even Leo Bryant, came up to me and said, this was really good. This was really nice to have such a tight knit, small group. and something I thought was a total failure after looking at the numbers, but based on the event, everybody thought was a huge success just because it was an opportunity to connect. And after that, I think it just got me excited and energized to try to make a difference within the volunteer community and to help set up these. I found that it's really important to connect with people. It's really important to be engaged. It's really important to be active. And I really enjoy being part of IEEE. It gives me a lot of networking connections. It gives me a lot of opportunities to practice skills like having to talk to people that I've never met before, skills such as planning a program and budgeting. Those are all skills that I developed early on, and they've certainly helped me in my career. They certainly become a part of my fabric of me, of who Nita is. And I've ever since then, ever since that first SPAC, I've been a very active member of IEEE. As I said, I've served in many different roles as an officer. I've served in all the officer roles at sections, both in Oklahoma City and here in New Hampshire. I've served in IEEE USA board level positions, Computer Society board level, and now as the Women in Engineering chair. And I'll tell you, it's very rewarding. It's very fascinating to learn and hear the different stories, to be able to experience the different events, to get a lot of new ideas. And I think it keeps me smart. It keeps me smart because I see all this great work other people do. And to be smart, you just have to have access to a lot of ideas. And being a volunteer gives you a lot of access to a lot of ideas and to other smart people who are wanting to and willing to share those ideas. And I think it works out great. So I love being IEEE. Keeps me busy, keeps me out of trouble, and it's very rewarding. So how does an IEEE society partner with women in engineering is the next question. We actually have 36 society liaisons, and what that means is that one of the IEEE societies, for example, the Power and Energy Society or the Computer Society, both of those have established a liaison with women in engineering. The liaison's role is to help connect women in engineering with their society and their society with women in engineering. We do that through teleconferences, which we hold every other month, as well as one in-person face-to-face meeting. But the society liaison does a little bit more than just participate in those conversations and calls. They help make sure that activities between the two, between women in engineering and their society, is in sync and that we're moving in the same direction. If we had 36 people all trying to do something different, we would be making good progress, but we wouldn't be making as great a progress as if we had 36 people pushing the cart all in the same direction on down the same road. And that's really the goal of the liaisons, is to help us do that. So they get involved in that. Societies can also participate in a couple of other ways. Societies have sponsored some of our chats, and if another society would be interested in sponsoring more of the chats, that would be fabulous because it does cost us money to rent Ustream and other technical pieces to run these conversations, but also to coordinate the time and get everything prepped. So sponsoring a chat is a great way to get involved. Societies can also have women in engineering events at their key flagship conferences to really connect just the concept of women in engineering to their broader community and bring awareness and recognition. So societies could partner in that way. Societies can also partner by helping us create some of the videos and the posters, just encouraging and recognizing women within their technical disciplines in a broader, bigger way and engaging them with women in engineering. Societies can help with our conference that we're planning and be exhibitors or sponsor pieces of the conference, provide speakers. All of those are different mechanisms in how societies can connect. I think one of the great things about women in engineering is that it's very cross-discipline. It spans all of our technology within IEEE. It's not just a very narrow technical field, but it's a broad spectrum of technical fields that are covered by women in engineering, and it's really exciting. And I think this is where you get more creative ideas. You, many of you may have heard, systems engineering and systems design is really moving and becoming more forefront of technology, and it's because things are so interconnected. One of the nice things about women in engineering is that you meet these individuals from all these different technology backgrounds, and having a conversation about what you do or how things are going help you understand different ideas in different ways. And that's another benefit of, I think, being a volunteer and being engaged in your activities is you're going to get a lot of great ideas you can take back to your organizations, take back to your technical problems, and you'll get a creative spark. Who knows, maybe something you hear at a presentation or a conference, and it just changes your perspective of how you were thinking of the problem, and it provides you a new insight into how to solve the problem. And this is all the great stuff that comes out of being actively engaged and involved in IEEE and Women in Engineering. So I strongly encourage you to do that, and I strongly encourage the societies to continue. And we have fabulous support from our society sponsors. We have a chat coming up sponsored by EMBS with Carolyn McGregor, who's going to talk a little bit about her career at EMBS. So those are just one of the many ways to have societies get engaged. The next question is there a fee to join Women in Engineering? There is a fee to join Women in Engineering. As many of you join IEEE, then you have an option to join Women in Engineering as a full professional grade member. Students and graduate students are able to join Women in Engineering, I believe students for sure, for free. So you don't need to pay the extra amount, but your dues are being supplemented and supported by the full grade members of engineering. So Women in Engineering does have a fee similar to a society. However, it's only $25, and that's really not a lot. That's a one dinner out, and you can pay for your entire year membership of Women in Engineering. I personally think it's very much worth the value. Certainly, everybody has their opinion, and you probably have to discover for yourself what you find. But I believe that if you get involved and get engaged and look at the different spectrum of products and services we provide, it's definitely of value. How did I choose my particular engineering field? I'm not sure if I chose it or it chose me. You know, sometimes life works out like that, and in some ways, I think it chose me. I always loved tinkering with components and electronics, and as the years have gone by, I didn't enter college thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be a systems engineer and this is the type of technology I'm going to work on." Maybe others have different experiences where they've known from very young exactly what they wanted to do. And I did know that I wanted to do engineering because I loved the creativeness that was involved. I loved the problem solving aspect of it. I loved being able to use all sorts of different skills and pulling ideas together and coming up with something innovative and creative, and or just getting the problem solved and things done and executed. So I always loved using my hands and thinking about problems and figuring out how to do. And so I knew engineering was what I wanted to do, but I didn't necessarily know that it was a specific type. I think I picked electrical because it had, to me, the most potential. You got to see a lot of the fundamental science that's behind engineering, as well as how to apply that science. And you could do anything from, as I mentioned, all the different societies we have, power to biology and biomedicine to chemical analysis to software development and electronics. And there was just this huge potential in electrical engineering and its related disciplines. So that's what I picked when I first went to SMU. I mean, I did know I was going to get an electrical engineering, but I didn't quite know the field. And the field sort of evolved over time. My first job, my first job was at Texas Instruments Defense Systems in McKinney, Texas, just about half an hour south of Dallas. And I was thinking, I mean, north of Dallas, and I was thinking, oh, great. I'm going to go in here at my first job and I'm going to design circuit boards and I'm going to be um, uh, move eventually into chip design and do all sorts of things like that. I couldn't have been further from the truth of what I actually ended up doing, even in my first job, and I liked it. I found it was fascinating to be able to take not just low level hardware, but then to think about how does the application software run on that hardware and what am I going to do with it and what should the system look like and how is it going to work and what are the interactions. And maybe that was my first way into systems engineering, and I was more of an individual contributor in that sense, but it sort of coalesced into what does systems design mean. And ever since then, I've sought out positions where I'm able to look at multiple facets of the engineering problem space and the solution space, and bring my background in electronics and image processing and software, embedded software development all together into a nice package and move it forward. So I guess that's how I chose engineering, and the field specifically of what I do ended up choosing me. So another question. Do you think with the way society is moving forward, the amount of men and women in engineering professions will soon be equal? Or does more work need to be done to get there? Well, it's actually a fascinating question. When you look at graduation statistics for universities, more women are graduating from universities with bachelor's degrees than men are graduating. And this crossover point sort of happened maybe 5, 6 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. I don't remember the exact statistics, but if you go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or if you go to some UNESCO World Economic Forum statistics, both of them show similar trends across the globe where more women are graduating than men with university degrees. Now, that's university degrees total period in the whole, not specifically in technology fields. In technology fields, the level has stayed relatively flat, and that I think is a little bit discerning. We have more women becoming workers and members of the professional community as a whole, but not necessarily the technology professional community. And I think it means that we need to do more work here. What is it? It's not that the women don't want to work or don't want to be in the workforce, because you're not seeing that. You're seeing them graduate in higher numbers. You're seeing them take on more of the workforce and the work share of the workforce, but you're not seeing them take on a larger role in the engineering and technology areas. So what is it about this space that's not attracting women? And I think it's important for men and women to figure that out and to try to promote it. And some of it is about putting role models out there. Some of it is about having conversations that engineering is not just a man's field. It's a integrated, mixed, it's a professional field for everybody that wants to extend and practice their creative talents and problem solving skills and get into the nitty gritty of changing the technology around us. And it's such a huge part of our makeup as a people. Everything we touch and do is based on technology. So I think it's really important to have very technically literate people in the workforce. So we need to do a better job of getting more women that are technically literate in the workforce, because they're becoming a bigger and bigger, or at least equal part of the workforce. And if that's the case, then we need that to happen within the engineering and technology community. So I think there's more work to be done there. We need to definitely continue pushing and advocating for women in engineering, helping girls understand and develop the skills necessary to become engineers and technologists, and all of those things are important to pursuing. Thank you for an overview of WE. I have just started as WE liaison for IEEE UFFC. So welcome, Lori. I'm glad to have you, and we're excited that you are a liaison for this organization and society. So thanks, Lori. Welcome. As I mentioned, there's a lot of great stuff going on. We have hugely active local affinity groups. Our local affinity groups number over 435, and they all are having great projects that they're conducting throughout the year. I mean, I'm so impressed when I see reports. And for those of you who don't follow the Facebook page regularly or take a look at the newsletter, you're missing out on some great ideas. There's great events happening all around the world and great ideas of how to do not just outreach to young girls and women in communities, but also changing and evolving programs and practices for the benefit of humanity. There's a lot of great stuff going on. So this question that just came in, what is the most spectacular thing that you have accomplished? Hmm, that's good. I don't know. I feel very blessed. I've had a very great life in a way, and I it's been very positive. And certainly I've had my negative parts of it. Um, but the most spectacular thing I've accomplished, I don't know. And I guess if I really was pressed, it might not even be part of my work. It would be part of my personal life. For those of you who have met my husband, Alex, you may know that he's not Indian, he's Caucasian. And for me growing up and marrying a Caucasian, that was a little bit of a difficult cultural change for my family. And I feel like nobody would think marrying somebody is an accomplishment, but it kind of was for my family. It was a big cultural shift. So maybe that's it, but I think I'm sure there's more spectacular things I've accomplished than that. So let's see. Please explain more about the IEEE Women in Engineering Conference, and will this be an annual event? The goal is to have this be an annual event. Right now, as I mentioned, we're planning the Women in Engineering International Conference for 2014 in San Francisco for May 2nd through 3rd. And the objective of the conference is focusing on mid-career and professional women, either in industry, academia, or government. And I really believe that we need to have some very core centric and focused technology professional development topics. And some of the topics we're considering, and the way I view it is more like a mini MBA. Skills you need to get ahead, essentially, to have your career move beyond wherever it is, whether you've just started your career or thinking about starting your career. What's the next steps? How do you develop those skills, such as negotiation, executive presence, communicating with tact, understanding the difference between a mentor and sponsor and how to take advantage of each one, understanding the business fundamentals and financials that are fundamental to understanding um, to an organization and how your contributions help that organization. So that's the focus. We do plan to make it an annual event. I believe we'll be in the next couple of months starting to think about where should we hold it for 2015 and starting to discuss that with the community. So if there's anybody out there that's interested in teaming up with your local affinity group and wanting to maybe put in a bid or throw out your section as a potential sponsor or partner on that'd be great. Send me an email. My email is very easy to find on the website, but I can give it to you as well. It's nita.patel@ieee.org. So feel free to reach out to me. So can I talk about some of the most interesting or effective WE projects? Yes, absolutely. Many of the WE projects that we do with our local communities seem to be very effective. I visited India, Region 10, the Student WE Congress a few months ago. It was in July, and I met some of the young women who are part of the student branches there, as well as some women that are part of the affinity groups there. And they were doing some just amazing work in reaching out to their communities. They've set up one particular that struck me was a skills development workshop that an affinity group set up. It was a STAR program, which is a mentoring type program for their local women in the community, and they helped them establish a basic area where they could come together, learn skills like how to get some basic microfunding, helped them acquire contacts within the community to get the parts to build whatever they wanted to sell. In this particular case, they had a very focused program, which was some jewelry that was handmade by the women. And they monitored and walked these women, it was about 30 participants, through this process for 6 weeks. And I thought, wow, what a sense of commitment by that affinity group, as well as the whole the whole tale of teaching somebody how to fish as opposed to giving them fish. This actually exemplified that. They taught these women how to be self-sustaining women within their communities, and it was done very locally, very actively engaged, and over a period of time. And I thought that was a great project. We also have very many projects with our societies that we do at conferences, and many of them have been very wonderful in the sense that it's brought together a sense of community, a network, as well as provided practical technical skills to women that have been attending the conference on specific topics of importance to them. And then certainly professional development programs. So there's a lot of interesting and effective WE projects, and I think some of it has to be tailored and understood for where you are, what is important in your local affinity group, what might be needed by the community of women that are there, and how can you help them. So in not saying that there's one program that can apply across the board, I think you have to think a little bit about what are the important needs in your particular community. Next question. Why should someone from a Women in Engineering affinity group or student branch affinity group become part of WE? So I'm not quite sure what that means, but being a part of a Women in Engineering affinity group or student branch affinity groups helps you actually have this network and community to understand and share problems and ideas, and to cross fertilize your ideas and to get different perspectives, and then to also multiply. As you know, when you're trying to execute on your own, it can be very daunting. But if, as soon as you have two or three people helping you execute on what it is that you want to accomplish, it becomes a lot easier and a lot more productive, because you have not just yourself as a resource, but you're bringing this diverse talent set to the problem, and you're bringing other hands to help you not just do the share of the work, but the share of the concept and the share of the ideas. And I think that's really important. So when you're part of a group, that's the advantage you get. And being part of the local affinity groups or the student branch affinity groups is a great way to meet people, to exchange ideas, to help you get some momentum behind your projects. And the more focused you can be as an organization, the better you're going to be. So you can come together, brainstorm, prioritize what you brainstorm, and then go execute on the top two, three, and you'll find that you're much more successful as opposed to if 10 different individuals went out into the community with 10 different approaches and ideas. So I think that's one of the keys to being part of an affinity group. So we're nearing our end of the time here. We have about 10 more minutes. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to talk a little bit, as I mentioned, about some of the upcoming work here. We have a few more chats coming up in September and October. I encourage you to look on the Facebook page, look on the IEEE website, and you'll see more information about the chats. Send the information to people you might know and get them to connect and have a conversation. If you have an idea for somebody, or if you'd like to do a chat yourself, send me a note, or send a note to women@IEEE.org, and we'll take a look and try to see if it makes sense to schedule it and try to weave it in. Oh, a question came in. Are there any existing programs to help women engineers attending IEEE conferences with childcare cost? There has been discussion about that. I think one of the challenge any organization has is, where are you going to apply your monetary resources? And as women in engineering, we have very limited resources in terms of money. So we've talked about trying to help set up some travel grants, and we have a scholarship established by the IEEE Foundation for this purpose. We have a Women in Engineering fund at the foundation in the hopes of being able to set up travel grants for women to attend conferences. However, our fund level is very low, and until we reach some level where we can realistically distribute the funds, right now it's only in the hundreds of dollars. We need it to be in at least the thousands of dollars before we can do something with it. So right now, Women in Engineering doesn't have a particular program. At the IEEE level, from conferences and conference planning services, I'm not sure if they do. I can certainly take that as something to look into and talk with the conferences group. To what I know, I don't believe I've heard of that, but to be completely honest, I really don't know the answer if there is something at the IEEE conferences level. You're welcome to take a look at the IEEE conferences website and see if they have services they provide. I know IEEE also has a benefits page that lists a whole bunch of different services they provide. We partner with an organization that does provide insurance and other services such as potentially childcare, but I'm not sure exactly what those are. So I'd encourage you to take a look at either the benefits website or the conferences website. How do you think a society can help attract females to STEM professions? I think there are a couple of things societies can do. Societies can talk about their technology in terms of why it's important, how it's interesting, how individuals contribute to that technology and help affect the world around them. And I think talking in those terms will naturally attract men and women, but I think more so women if you talk about how it's going to reach beyond just themselves and just the technology. Also, I think bringing awareness to the fact that there are so few women within society and technical disciplines. I think people tend to think, oh, there's just women and it but until they see some of the statistics and the number, they don't really realize how lopsided it is. And I think bringing some of that awareness, I think societies can also help promote role models within their technical communities. Understand that a lot of girls don't see many women in engineering and technology disciplines, so they think, oh, that's not something they naturally will think about as a potential. But if the societies can highlight the women within their societies that are doing the technical work, I mean, I certainly encourage the societies to partner with women in engineering. We have several venues we try to do that through our posters, our ebook, our chats. I mean, all of those things societies can participate in by providing their talent in the sense of women that are part of that society to help add information to what we're putting out there for role models. That's definitely another way societies can participate in promoting and attracting women to the STEM profession. I've many of you may not know, but there is a research done by the National Academy of Engineering called Changing the Conversation. You can just Google NAE Changing the Conversation and you'll find a very fascinating short report. The report talks about how to attract people in general, both girls and boys, to engineering. And often we as engineers tend to talk about, oh, you need to study math and study science and you need to think about all these hard things and you need to, do a lot of work and you can get into engineering. But that's not the way you're going to attract people. So this Changing the Conversation study and report puts out a series of 8 to 10 short phrases you can do, such as dreams, engineering's or engineers dream and they change the world around them. They're makers, they're doers, they're creative thinkers, they're problem solvers. Those subtle things like that, just changing how you talk about engineering and how you would describe the work that society is doing or describe the work that women in engineering is doing or IEEE is doing is going to change who you're attracting. And women tend to be more attracted to those broader senses, innovation, it's affecting humanity, it's changing the world, those types of topics. Not to say that it's just exclusive to women, it's exclusive to everybody. So will we have regional WE events? We've considered having regional WE events. We certainly have had regional WE events in some regions. I know in Region 9 we had a regional WE event this past year where the Region 9 coordinator, Nuri, had put together a program and brought together women in engineering affinity group leaders all around the Latin America and brought them together to have a regional WE training and event. So it's not out of the question. It's more about again resources and planning, but there's no reason why individuals couldn't step up and say I'm going to have a regional original event and hold something in your area, certainly attract people from all over. So, again, thank you for joining us. I appreciate the opportunity to serve as your Women in Engineering Chair for 2013. I, I've I've enjoyed my tenure this year, and I'm looking forward to the tenure next year. Not that the year is over, but we have a lot of great initiatives and work that's going on. We have one other question that just came in. How important are soft skills to achieve success as an engineer? And I think they're very important. I think soft skills are important not just to achieve success as an engineer, but to achieve success as a professional in the workforce. You need to be aware. You need to have some sense of emotional intelligence, some sense of awareness about yourself and how you interact and how others interact with you. You need to be able to communicate your ideas. You need to be able to think strategically beyond just your immediate problem that you're trying to solve. You need to be able to understand the financial implications. You need to be able to communicate. I'm very active in Toastmasters, as I mentioned, and I think it's a fabulous organization, and almost all engineers should be required to take some level of communication and leadership skills development, which is the focus of Toastmasters. Because without that, you don't know or have a sense of how you should advance your cause, how you should advance whether your cause is getting a project approved or your cause is getting your career advanced or your cause is just convincing somebody that this is the right way to do that. And these activities require soft skills. It's important to be smart technically and capable technically and being able to execute technically, but you also need to understand and be aware of the effects of the world around you in that sense and how you're going to bring all the pieces together and how you're going to advance it. So I think soft skills are an absolute necessity, not just for engineers, but for everybody. You need to not, I don't like the word well-rounded because I'm not quite sure what that means, but you need to have an awareness and some level of skills in being able to communicate, lead, organize, manage your time, all of those which are traditionally thought of as soft skills. And if you can do those well, you can you can leverage your technology and your expertise in the technology to a much greater advantage. So it's important to develop those soft skills, and I encourage you to take advantage when you're offered training opportunities or attend a conference and have an opportunity to listen in on a seminar about soft skills or go to a webinar on skills development. Being able to do more than just your work is important within any part of the organization and is necessary to truly advance it, not just in the management ladder, but also the technical ladder. If you want to be able to lead teams, you need to be able to lead teams, and those leadership skills are soft skills. So I think it's hugely important. So again, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. For those of you who have joined and participated in the questions, thank you very much. It makes the time go by very quickly. I can't believe it's already an hour and the time is up. Those of you who'd like to join us on our next chat, I encourage you to do so. Our next chat is next Friday with Veronica Bermudez. I'm sure she's going to give us a great conversation. And you can also go back and look at some of the older chats through the Ustream channels. If you go to the Ustream and pick a channel of the person you'd like to replay their chat or listen in again. And then certainly you can email or talk or have a, give me a call, send me a note, write a letter, however you want to get in touch with me. I'm happy to reply. I don't guarantee that you'll get it within 24 hours, but usually within 2 to 3 days. I try to keep up with my email and responses. So I thank you for participating. I thank you for your time. Thank you for the great questions. It was very engaging, and I appreciate your involvement and engagement in women in engineering, and I encourage you to think about how can you help recruit, retain, and recognize women, whether it's recognizing them by nominating them for something, or if it's recruiting them by speaking to a school or a classroom, or retaining them by just encouraging or holding activities that are of interest, technical or professional. please do that. I think you'll not only find great reward in having given back to the community, but you'll find personal satisfaction and you'll probably learn something. Every time I do an activity or engage in something, I learn something new, and I think that's so exciting and so motivating to be able to constantly be learning. So thanks again, and I'm honored to serve as your chair. Take care. Bye.